All right, everybody. Here we are for episode 27 of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. This week, as we come upon the new year, we are going to do our top 5 reviewed movies of the year. We're not doing top 5 movies of the year just because I have watched a lot more movies than Wayne has, and this is nothing against Wayne. It's just I tend to take in more films, and you're more on the TV side, I would say, Wayne.
Absolutely.
So we're just going to stick to the ones that we've watched so far this year. And it'll be our top 5 of the year. And we'll obviously, as the Oscars come closer, we'll do more top of lists. We may even do more before then. We'll get to it. But right now, we're going to do our top 5 of the year that we've reviewed. And Wayne, I want you to start.
All right. We just finished up the holiday season. I am going to start mine off with Last Christmas, the 2019 film. I remember when we reviewed this, I was absolutely in love with it, and I just am still. Directed by Paul Feig, written by George Michael, Emma Thompson, and Greg Wise. Just a fantastic little holiday film with a lot of the little underlying messages about the scope of what's going on that isn't in your face, very subtle. Just made me really happy. Obviously, I'm a little biased because the song Last Christmas by Wham is one of my absolute holiday favorites. So we heard that in several different versions and varieties throughout the film. So yeah, this even talking about it just makes me happy. So
a very enjoyable film. I thought the chemistry between the two leads was great, and I do. While it's not on my list, I did enjoy this film when we reviewed it.
It was nice to see Khaleesi not riding and killing people with dragons.
Let me put my phone on silent.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Yes, yeah, it was something different. I know she's done other movies, obviously, since Game of Thrones, but this was a little more definitely more on the sweeter side, I think. All right, so my number 5, I'm going to start with a movie that we reviewed not too long ago called Run, starring Sarah Paulson, directed by Anish Shaganti, and also starring Kira Allen, who is a disabled actress who made her debut in that movie and was fantastic. Her and Sarah Paulson were great in this movie. It's a very intense thriller. It's very enjoyable from start to finish. It's an hour and a half, so it's one of those things that's like it's enjoyable, entertaining. You're taken for a ride, and it's over very quickly. So, and it's not that's not a negative against it. The fact that it's kind of a quick watch is a positive because then you can get more content and you can watch another movie, watch another TV show, whatever. So it provides a lot of entertainment in a short amount of time, and I really enjoyed this movie. It's one of the few that I was glad did go straight to streaming because honestly I probably wouldn't have seen it like in theaters if we were in normal times, but I would have watched it when it came out on home video, and I really enjoyed it. And I think people should definitely check it out. It's on Hulu if you haven't seen it. Sarah Paulson gives a fantastic performance, I think.
100% agree. This was actually on my list as well. This was number 3 for me. Obviously, just not in any particular order, but this is just the third one that I put down when I'm thinking about my favorites that we reviewed this year. I think that beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is the one that was most surprising to me. I didn't expect much from it, and just I was enthralled by everything. Just the way they set up tension and how they, without giving too much away, just you're on the edge of your seat, and the performances are great. The fact that Kira Allen is a disabled actress, and more less than perfect people are getting their opportunities to show what they really can do is just fantastic, and it's a huge step forward. And we talked about this on the first podcast. We want to see more of it. We want to see more people with opportunities. We talked about the whitewash aspect of things, and something that I like that more attention is being brought to how do we put this? I'm trying to think, trying to deliver this in a
I think more attention is being brought to other humans in life that go through different things than the rest of us. Like, I mean, it's no surprise that Wayne and I are two straight white men in a world that caters to us. So to have performance from a disabled actress in a movie that's gotten very great reviews and has been seen by a lot of people is huge. To have a movie like Crazy Rich Asians, which is all Asian people in a romantic comedy, that's huge. Now, people may not like these movies all the time, but the fact that they get made is a big deal. And they do, unfortunately, in the world we live in, they have to be successful to continue the progress. So something like Crazy Rich Asians was huge because not only was it reviewed well, it was successful. So you're going to get more of that. The down part is when you get a movie with a female lead sometimes, like a superhero movie, which we'll get to in our Awfully Good section, if it's not successful, then the studios will shy away from that for many years because it didn't work. So in this case, hopefully this kind of opens the door for more disabled actors to get into movies and be successful and have the ability to showcase their talent just like everybody else does, or a lot of other people do. And again, it's, just recognizing that, Wayne and I personally aren't the problem. We want people to have these chances, but everybody else needs to, including us and everybody involved, needs to be able to allow these chances to happen. It's the people at the top that make these decisions. And a lot of times I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's their own subconscious biases that get in the way, where it's like, well, that's not worked before, so we're not going to do that. Or we need this person to be able to do this, and this disabled person can't do that, so we have to hire an actor. I don't think they even get asked most of the time whether they can do it or not. It's just they cast an actor that they know can do it, instead of, like in this case, I'm sure they went to someone like Kira Allen and were like, hey, do you think you could crawl on the floor and move around and stuff even though that you are disabled? And she was able to do it, and she did it very well. And the movie is, I think, successful because of that. Once you know that that's how she is in the movie and in real life, you kind of, I think, even more respect for her, just the fact that she's able to do what she can, plus the physical abilities the physicalness, I guess, that is required for this role. It's not just her sitting in a wheelchair for an hour and a half. She actually has to do stuff. And I hope none of this is coming off offensive, because that's not how I mean it at all. I want everybody to understand, it's a big deal. And I think people need to be open to more stuff like this and understand that when people say that, we need to, they're not trying to say that only gay people can play gay people or only straight people should play straight people. What they're saying is we need to give more gay people, more trans people, more black people, Asian people, disabled people more opportunities. Once you give more of those opportunities, some of those other things will go away and people won't be upset. Because I'll tell you right now, as we talked about in one of my movies coming up here, Kristen Stewart had said, like, so what does that mean? Because she's a queer woman, so she's like, does that mean I can't play straight people anymore? Because that's what, she likes. She has the ability to do kind of all of that. And you kind of have to be able to come to the middle and just be like, everybody needs to be able to have a chance. So they need to kind of open up these opportunities, because there was a lot of criticism for a movie recently, Prom, with James Corden, where he plays a gay man, and he plays it very stereotypical. And people don't necessarily have a problem with the stereotypical part if it's played by a gay person. The problem is that a straight man played it, so then they think that, like, oh, well, this must be how he thinks gay people are supposed to be. And therefore, they kind of put their negativity onto the actor, even though maybe that's what he was told to do. So it's this whole thing of we just need to, I think, open up the ability to give everybody the opportunity to play the parts that maybe were made for them. And I think that'll kind of start to widen the gauge a little bit on acceptance, and that people realizing that if we put these people in this movie, they could, it'll be successful as well. And I think Run, hopefully, is a start to that. And again, it's just a really fun movie and a very intense film. But that it does hold a lot to it, like, and maybe a lot of people don't know that there's this underlying thing of, like, this is a disabled actress in a lead role for the first time in I don't even know, to be honest. Like, I'm sure there's a record out there. You know, there's movies like The Ringer and stuff where they put disabled people in it, but Johnny Knoxville was the main star. You know, so I mean, you have to just see the progress here, and I think it's good for Hollywood. So
right. It's funny you brought up The Ringer, because I remember him getting a lot of flack for making a movie where it's seemingly making fun of disabled people, and I didn't think of that at all. I thought it was awesome that he had a project where he could actually highlight people with special needs. He did.
Needs. And the one thing about that movie I think that people missed the mark on was that he was the one that all the bad stuff happened to. The guy that was doing the bad thing had all the bad stuff happen to him, and that was the Farrelly brothers who produced that movie, and they are friends with the disabled community and work a lot of them into their movies. Now, granted, it's usually into small roles, but they have a lot of actors that they use over and over again from the disabled community, and I think that's a great thing that they do to kind of just shine light on them. And they don't, while obviously some of them, if they hire them and they're in a wheelchair for life, they have to use that. But their character in the movie, even if it's a small character, isn't defined by their disability, which I think is something that's great that they do. That maybe gets overlooked because some of their movies can be kind of trashy and kind of gross. But they do a lot for that community. And not that like that means we should give them autonomy and to do whatever they want, but I just think that gets overlooked. And they even think that they agree that they got something wrong with The Ringer. I thought it was done in a pretty good way, but that's just me. I think it's one of those movies on the outside that a lot of people didn't see it. So then they just judge it based on, well, Johnny Knoxville's making fun of crippled people. And it's like, that's not what he's doing. But regardless, anyway, this isn't about The Ringer. This is about our top 5 movies of the year. Wayne, why don't you go to your number 4?
All right, this is probably one of the most anticipated reviews that we had, and I know that from the second they announced it, I was gonna love it regardless of what it was. It's Bill and Ted Face the Music. Uh-oh.
No, I love this choice.
Okay, you got me worried there, sir. It's like, don't do this to me.
Oh no, trust me. It's I'll be honest, it's not on my list, but it's an honorable mention.
This is on my list just because of the nostalgia factor for me. Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter return as Bill and Ted to, once again, save the world and save the music. Because they are excellent to one another.
And they are wild stallions.
There were a lot of critics of this movie who didn't really like it. I will say, and this is not a knock on anybody, but a lot of the people that didn't like it or didn't get it were born after the first movies came out. Yep. So they had the same nostalgia factor that we do. But just the different versions that we saw of Bill and Ted and the tribute to Rufus were all fantastic. But honestly, and I think we're in agreement here, the daughters, Kristen Shale and Samara Weaving were...
Well, Kristen Shaw was Rufus's daughter, actually. It's no, it's okay.
I'm reading off of IMDb right now, and yes, Bridget Lundy Payne.
Yes.
They were really the highlights of the movie for me. The fact that they were just like their dads.
Yes.
Was just perfect for me.
And what's funny about this, too, is, first off, everybody knows I'm a huge Samara Weaving fan. If you pay attention to me, she's in a lot of horror films, and that's something that obviously I like. But what it was interesting, I listened to her on a podcast talk about this, and she had no idea what Bill and Ted was. Talking about people born after this time. She's only like 25 years old, so she had no idea, and she's from Australia. So living in Australia and that cultural phenomenon that was Bill and Ted, it never reached outside of the United States for the most part, it seems. So her getting this role, she had to like go immediately and watch these movies because she had no idea what they were. So I think that's an interesting way to go into a part too, is to like, you audition for it, just be like, yeah, sure, I'll audition. And then you get it and you're like, well, crap, what is this? I have no idea. And you kind of have to, then you're watching it, I imagine, hoping that you like it, right? What's the worst part? You take a role, you watch it, and you're like, wow, this is crap. So at least I think she was able to relate to it at least, and it gave a really nice performance as Bill's daughter and Thea. And she just was really good. And so was Lundy Payne as well. Was it Bridget, right? Bridget Lundy Payne, who is on the show Atypical on Netflix, who is very good on that show, and I highly recommend that show. We were just talking about people with disabilities being in the forefront, and that is a show that deals with people with autism, and it's a really good show, and she is fantastic as the kind of somewhat mean sister on it. Good show. But regardless, Bill and Ted, I didn't mean it to sound like I didn't like this movie. I love this movie. And I didn't put it in my top 5, but that's only because I was going more for, some of it was going more towards quality. Not to say that Bill and Ted's not a quality film. I just saw some things this year that we reviewed that I thought, technically were maybe better. But as a movie, and for what I was waiting for this year, people know me. I'm a huge Bill and Ted fan. I've been waiting for this for a long time. And it exceeded all of my expectations. I loved every second of it. I was in it from the first frame of this movie when they're at the wedding of Deacon and Missy. Just first, that was like, oh my God, I can't believe they did it. And then them up at front being the wedding band and being the Wild Stallions and having their Beach Boys moment where they're doing like these weird sounds and throat singing, which Alex Winter had to learn to do for the movie. So it's just, they gave us everything I think us Bill and Ted fans wanted, and it was perfect. It was, it was in my, I'll get to my honorable mentions, but it's number 1 in my honorable mention. So like if I did more, it would be right there. And it just, it basically saved 2020 for me as a movie person. It was great. And it was everything I think we needed at the time.
Absolutely.
So my number 4 is going to be one I've talked about several times. I'm going to talk about it again, and we only just reviewed it like a month ago. Happiest Season with Kristen Stewart and Mackenzie Davis. Just a great movie. Aubrey Plaza also in this movie, directed by Clea Duvall. We talked about, Wayne said Last Christmas was one of his holiday movies. We've reviewed quite a few of them in the last month. This was my favorite that we've done. It's a rom-com, but it's a lesbian rom-com, which we don't have a lot of those, and even if we do, they're usually indie films. This is somewhat of a big budget movie with big stars and big casts, a lot of people in it, and it's a lot of fun. It's really enjoyable. It's a lovely film. It handles, I think, all the elements very well. The elements of a relationship, just in general, where everybody, I think, can relate, but then just to make the lesbian relationship the forefront of the movie, I think is a big deal. And I just really enjoyed this movie. I've seen it twice already. I look forward to watching it again. I as we've talked about on this podcast, I am a fan of Kristen Stewart. People mostly think of her from Twilight. That was like, the first one was like 13 years ago now, so I think people should probably just let it go. She's done a lot since then and given a lot of really good performances. And I'm not going to say this is her best performance because it's a rom-com. She's done other movies where she's given better performances. It's just a really fun movie. It's really heartwarming, and I just love it. Everything about it was kind of hit every note for me, and it really just made it, to me, that holiday movie.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And like we said, there were some fantastic performances all around. But again, this one touches on what we touched on with actors getting to express themselves as to who they are.
Yep.
And stretch yourself as well.
It's about representation. I think that's something that's big, especially here in 2020. We've had a lot of that because a lot of the smaller movies have been the bigger movies this year because Hollywood kind of shut down. So you've gotten to see some of these movies like this kind of take the forefront because the Hollywood wasn't releasing its normal thing. And I think it's a message to Hollywood. It's a message to Hollywood. Hey, release more of these movies. Make representation more of a thing, which I think people have been trying to get through to them. And it's hard. It's hard to break through that wall that they have up. But they need to kind of start to realize that this is the way they need to go. And I think when you get like the NBA and the NFL finally realizing that there's these problems in America, that they don't have to put themselves on the front of it, but they can acknowledge it and understand that there's a problem and maybe try to help that problem go forward. And I think with Hollywood, it's the same thing. And they've been really good on the social justice front from the beginning, I think. now they need to, kind of address some of their other issues that they've had, which is queer representation in movies, disabled people representations, more people of color in starring roles, or in supporting roles for that matter. And I think this, again, is another movie that kind of sets that forward. And I'm not choosing these movies to talk about these conversations, people. These are just conversations we're having because of these movies. I really do love these movies that I've talked about, Run and Happy Season, and I will probably watch them, numerous times because I really enjoyed them. And they're both on Hulu. All right.
Well, the fact that we should feel comfortable talking about these movies. Like, this is a relationship movie.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens to involve two women.
Yeah.
And sooner everybody, calms down. It's like, all right, it's a relationship movie.
Yes.
It doesn't who the relationship involves.
Yeah. If
you can't relate to what happened in this, then you must not have lived or been in many relationships.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what they're trying to make it. They don't even want you to see it as the queer rom-com movie. They just want you to see it as a rom-com movie about queer people. That's what they want you to see. And I think the more people that can say that and that we can see it like that, it'll be more commonplace. So we won't be like, oh my God, look, it's Lifetime finally did a gay holiday movie. Like, it'll just be commonplace, and they'll do it anyway just because they want to, just because they're supposed to do it that way. And these stories need to be told just like straight white people stories need to be told. So it's like, but we've told those, so maybe not tell as many of those. We've told those.
Story, do we honestly?
Here, that's a good point. We've told several of those. So, just mix it up a little bit. That's all we're saying. And I think the movie industry will be better off for it. If just, again, letting more people in the door. That's kind of what we want in the industry. All right, Wayne. So we kind of already talked about your number 3 and you gave your comments, but just mention it again.
Yep, number 3 was Run.
So check it out. Check it out on Hulu, everybody.
Absolutely. We talked about it. It's fantastic. One of the biggest surprises and most pleasant delights that I had. If you haven't seen it yet, you are in for a treat. I'm not going to spend any more time on it because I don't want to hype it up more than it needs to. I don't see it.
All right, so my next one is going to be my only one from 2019, and it's one that Wayne and I disagreed on. I think he already probably knows what it is. It's Midsummer by Ari Aster, starring Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, some other people, Will Poulter, as we talked about him a couple times on this podcast. This is a crazy movie. It's about a cult, basically, and it takes place in Europe. And it's just a nutty film. It starts off crazy. It starts off with a murder-suicide, and then kind of just goes on this path. And it's 2.5 hours. There's a director's cut out there as well. I haven't watched it yet. I've only watched the original. And this movie, to me, it's so crazy that I loved it so much. And I know it's not for everybody, trust me. And when I say this isn't like, oh, you need to go watch it. Only watch it if you like movies that kind of challenge your own sensibilities and make you kind of go on a ledge of like, this is kind of something maybe I shouldn't like because it's so depraved and so crazy, but I kind of like it. Like, that's how I feel about this movie. I really, really enjoyed it in the sense of like just watching cinema. It's not entertainment per se. It's not watching Dumb and Dumber or something, silly or like Happy Season or Run that I already did my 4 and 5 picks. It's a movie you kind of have to get involved in. And I really like this movie a lot. I think people maybe haven't watched it because it's supposed to be weird and disturbing. If that turns you off of it, probably don't watch it because that's what it is. It doesn't hide what it is. Ari Aster is a very interesting filmmaker. I'm definitely looking forward to what he does next. And I think this movie is just super crazy, super good looking. The cinematography is fantastic in this movie. It looks great. Florence Pugh is fantastic in it. Last year in 2019, she gave 2 of her best performances in this and Little Women. 2 completely different movies, but this one, just crazy drug trip scenes, crazy cult scenes, crazy murder scenes, just kind of takes everything and It's just nuts. It's a nutty movie, and I understand. This is one of those movies I understand people not liking it, and I have no problem with people not liking it. I completely get it, but I thought it was great. So Wayne, there's my number 3. I know we disagreed on this when we reviewed it, but
we still do. The opening is fantastic with just setting it up, but I don't feel that it connect. For me, it didn't connect. Cinematography can't save the narrative for me, and the goal of the movie is to disturb the viewer, and yeah, it did that. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I don't know. I guess it set me up to go one direction, and I was expecting it to kind of circle around. And while it did, it just didn't circle it around in the way that I wanted it to. So I not, as a viewer, not being satisfied, and that's fine. That's just me not thinking the movie is going to end up the way that it did.
Yeah.
The horror was, or the goriness was the goriness, and it was cool. I just, it did succeed in areas where it made me feel uneasy, and it was shocking a lot of times. The gratuitous lovemaking scene, or ritualistic aspect of it, was confusing. But
yes.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Drawn out sex scene that is witnessed by a large number of people.
Yes.
Very, like I said, very ritualistic and whatnot, and unsettling. So it is successful if that's what it was going out to do, which I So yeah, it wasn't for me. 5 out of 10. So yeah. Again, it's very artsy, and I don't know if I just wasn't in the mood for artsy and very sad. And I don't know. It just it didn't hit with me. Maybe in a year or so I'll revisit it, and hopefully it'll be better received. I'll receive it better, I should say. But I'm still not a fan.
All right. Well, moving on to your number 2 then, Wayne.
All right, number 2, Project Power. This was a breath of fresh air for me. It was an action film that we hadn't really seen before. Story, when you break it down into its subsections, cop saves the day type thing. But Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt team up to stop the bad guys, basically. And there's a new designer drug on the street that gives you the ability to become a superhero or a supervillain. And it's basically the nutshell of it. It was very, very well shot, very pretty, a lot of action.
It really used the New Orleans locales, I think, to its advantage. It's a really fun movie, and I really like this movie a lot. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Jamie Foxx are really great in it, and I definitely think if people haven't seen it, they should check it out because it's really good. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely.
All right, so my number 2 was another one that we kind of disagreed on again, and this one was more recent. This was David Fincher's Mank, directed by David Fincher, starring Gary Oldman and Amanda Seyfried, Arliss Howard, and Charles Dance. I thought this movie was, from top to bottom, it looked great acting. The direction was fantastic. The screenplay I thought was great. The characters I thought were very rich, and it was a lot of fun to watch Gary Oldman have fun with this role. And I just, again, this is a movie I've seen criticized by people that don't like David Fincher, which is fine. Chances are, if you don't like David Fincher, you're probably not going to like this movie. It is very much his style. It is in black and white, like we talked about when we reviewed it. A lot like Citizen Kane is what it looks like. And that was obviously on purpose because it's about the making of the writing of Citizen Kane behind the scenes and how it went down. Whether there's a lot of discussion whether what happened was true or not, people have debunked it. Some people have said it is. So it's just you kind of almost have to take it as fantasy because we really don't know, I guess, what's true at this point because the writing process is not always very public. So it's one of those things that only a few people really know what happened, and those people are dead. So I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed the performances. I think Amanda Seyfried should definitely be nominated for this. Gary Oldman for sure will probably be nominated. David Fincher will probably be nominated. The editing is on point. The directing is fantastic. The cinematography I thought was great. It's just a really great cinema movie for a cinema nerd like myself. It really just kind of had everything. And I think it just set itself apart. From a lot of the movies I watched. Now, this being said, I enjoyed most of the movies we reviewed this year. Wayne and I both have said that there's only been a couple that we were like, were real duds. But this one, to me, just stood out among the rest, for the most part, except for obviously one of them. But yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the story was really interesting. And, the cast did a fantastic job. No knock on them. I just couldn't engage with it. I had trouble connecting. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to again, judge Citizen Kane for not being not living up to its title as one of the greatest films of all time. Yeah, for its time, fantastic, amazing, breathtaking, all that stuff. Again, for me, Citizen Kane is just another one of those films that I couldn't engage with when for its achievements, and it broke through so many difficulties and things that were not thought possible for its time. And I mean, I give it credit for that. I couldn't engage with it,
Yeah, I get it.
And again, and that's, I think, encapsulates why Mank was just okay for me. Yeah, Gary Oldman is fantastic, and I don't think that anybody, going through the reviews and people, bashing it, giving it a 2 out of 10 on IMDb and whatnot. It's like, I get that this is not the movie for you, or you were expecting of it then, because it's a biopic about things that actually happened.
Yes.
So,
my favorite negative reviews were, well, I loved Seven and Zodiac, but I didn't like this one. I'm like, well, those two movies are completely different than this movie. Like, if you were going in expecting a thriller about a serial killer, then yeah, you were probably misinformed and shouldn't have watched this movie. Like, do your research, people.
Yeah. And, that's like with my review, or my feelings toward Midsommar. I will definitely give it another go, much like I will give Mank another go. But I just didn't connect with it the first time. And when I say it's not for me and that I didn't like it, there is nothing wrong with these films. They're great. They are a labor of love. It just, these are just my opinions. And I just want to make sure that, because so many times when somebody doesn't like something, it's a terrible movie. Oh, this is wrong with it. That's wrong with it. And, something warranted. But a lot of times, it's just maybe the mood that you particularly were in, you didn't like it. So.
Yes, and I'm going to make this a statement too, because it's something I saw recently. It's okay to not like a movie. It's okay to even trash that movie on your own Twitter page, your own Facebook page, your own Instagram. But when someone else makes a comment, because I saw this recently, it was actually two famous people. Mike Flanagan, the director of Dr. Sleep, put his favorite horror movies of the year. And then Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville, for no other reason, went on there like, really, Mike? Seriously? These movies were trash. And it's like, you don't have to go on somebody else's page to tell them that you thought movies were trash, then when they're just giving good recommendations in their own opinion. You could do it on your own page and be like, you could even say, hey, I was just on Mike Flanagan's Twitter page and he liked these movies and I thought they were trash. You don't have to do it on his page because it makes you look like an asshole. And that's what Rosenbaum came off, and everybody was ripping him apart because of how he did it. There's a tact to doing these things. When it comes to Mank, some guy was like, oh yeah, I'm being attacked by Fincher fans. They're crazy. And it's like, dude, you went on Twitter, and I think he even went to like a review of Mank and put how shitty he thought the movie was. And I'm like, you don't expect people to come and defend the movie? Now, granted, when people do that, a lot of times they'll revert to like murder threats and stuff. Those people are just dumb. Don't do that. Just defend the movie if you want to defend it, or don't. You don't have to defend the movie. People can like whatever they like and dislike whatever they like. I feel like there's always this tension between movies and TV shows, like, oh, well, because 95% of the people love this movie, I'm not going to like it. Or the other way it goes around, because 95% of people hated this movie, I'm going to love this movie. And then I'm going to go on and I'm going to attack everybody that didn't like this movie and talk about how everyone's trash and none of their opinions matter because they didn't like this movie that I liked. What is that? Like, everyone has the right to not like what they don't want to like. If they see something like, we hated the new Doom movie, there's people that love that movie. That's why I chose it. I didn't like it. I thought it was trash. But you know what? I didn't go online into those people's pages and tell them that I thought their opinion was stupid, which is what ends up happening. And it just needs to be, movie criticism is not fact. And I think people, when they read Rotten Tomatoes, they're like, well, these people, this is a fact to them. It's like, no, it's just their opinion. It may be a fact to them and what they thought of the movie, but it doesn't need to be your opinion. You could watch the movie and decide what you think about it, and not have any of what they say really matter in your opinion.
Yeah, nothing more perfect example is the Star Wars universe right now.
Oh, God.
You want to talk about, the term toxic fan base. Yeah, there is nothing, I can't think of a better example than, people who judge everything by the 1970s and early 80s original trilogy. And everything else is trash compared to it. There are a lot of things I did not like about the sequel trilogy that was just... But, there's, like, as you said so eloquently, there's a difference between not liking something and expressing your opinion and being a dick about it.
Yeah. And
saying it ruined your childhood. Bro, you're 40 years old. You're 50 years old. Get over it.
Exactly.
And, I think Alfred in Batman said it best. Some men just want to see the world burn. Some people just are not happy unless they're miserable.
Yep. Exactly. And I think that, it was funny too, because the one guy I was talking about with Mank, and then I started looking into, and he started making more comments, and I'm like, oh, so he just doesn't like movies that other people like. That's what it was coming down to, is he's like, he's that guy that goes against the status quo, and it's like, that's a trash movie because it's popular, or because it's popular doesn't mean it's good. And it's like, yeah, you're right, but you don't have to be that guy that throws that out there all the time, making it sound like you're some cool dude. Like, dude, we get it, you don't like it, move on. Like, you don't have to, again, tear the movie down just to make yourself look better, which is what a lot of them end up doing. And even though they get a lot of people to agree with them, it doesn't make it right. And again, this is just our opinion. This is how I feel about it, because we don't trash movies on here. Granted, we do the awfully good or just plain awful, but we're doing that based off of what other people have said about the movie.
And most of them, they weren't that bad.
Huh? Yeah, most of the time. Yeah, exactly. But, so it's just, again, this is just our thoughts. And Mank is a perfect movie to kind of have those thoughts about, because one, it's about making movies, and it's about criticism too, in a sense, because there's a lot of criticism thrown around within the movie, and because of who made the movie, because some people like Fincher, some people have this undying hate for him because, I don't know, he pissed on their Cheerios one day. I have no idea.
He made me think and feel things.
What a dick. All right, anyway, we're going to move on to Wayne's number one. Wayne, do you have any honorable mentions that you want to go through, or no?
Yeah, man. The only real honorable mention I really, really want to make sure that we talk about is Cobra Cat.
Yes. Because
this was a series of 2 seasons of the revival of the Karate Kid story. Just so everybody knows, they have moved up the release of season 3 to next week.
Yep. It's on Friday.
Actually. So, yes, the season 3 trailer dropped last week, and it looks awesome.
I'm excited.
Netflix was started out on was it YouTube Red?
Yep, YouTube Red, yep.
Very excited for season 3. But yeah, this Cobra Kai focuses on Johnny Lawrence, the second place finisher in the 1984 All Valley Karate Tournament, and his rivalry with Daniel LaRusso, the protagonist of the Karate Kid films. Why was that so hard for me to say? I can't speak. Yeah, lots of throwback, a lot of nostalgia, a lot of throwbacks to these the Karate Kid films.
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny Lawrence, just the redemption of his character, because in the first movie he's very just a one-dimensional. He's the jerk. But, diving and doing a deep character dive on him, it's like, well, there's a lot of reasons why he is the way he is, and explain how he ended up as a late 40s, early 50s dude right now. And, his redemption story goes on, continues. So, yeah, I just think it's great. The action is fun, and for a YouTube series, I thought it was done fantastically.
Yes, I love this series, and I am super pumped that it got moved up a week. I cannot wait to watch season 3. Still holding out that, what's her name? Elizabeth Shue will appear in this season. She was not in the trailer, but I feel like they're hiding that from us on purpose.
Well, if you go back to the end of season 2.
Yep, I know. Yep. All right. So, Wayne, on to your number 1 then.
My number 1 is shocking, another Christmas movie. I chose Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey as my number 1 that we reviewed. I know that you are not a fan of the musical, sir, but I think even you were captivated by this film as much as I was.
I was. Honestly, I was a toss-up of whether we were going to either have the same pick or you were going to pick this one. So I was kind of leaning more towards this one because I know you're big into the holiday movies, as am I. And this movie, I know we both really liked it a lot, so I kind of thought that maybe this was going to be your choice. And, Jingle Jingle, A Christmas Story was a lot of fun. I really had a good time with it. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. But yeah, so go ahead and talk more about it, Wayne.
Forrest Whitaker and Keegan-Michael Key just nail it in every aspect of it. They're great actors. I didn't think they could sing as well as they could.
Mm-hmm.
Just outstanding. Felicia Rashad as the surprise twist character. I'm not going to go too much into it because it's still a very new movie and I'm not going to spoil anything. Is great. Obviously, we know her from The Cosby Show, and just as her matriarchal nature just shines through in this. But Madeline Mills is for me the star of this. She just blew me away in every scene that she was in. Just adorable, and just her delivery with her lines, it was just great. But I mean, Ricky Martin's surprise character in this was delightful.
Yes.
He shook his bonbon, shook his bonbon, shook his bonbon.
Him as the Matador toy, yeah, he was really funny.
Yep.
That was one of those ones too. I didn't know until the end of the movie. I'm like, I know that voice, but I'm like, I can't place it. And it's because he's a singer, not an actor. I'm not used to hearing his voice as an actor, so it didn't really register until after the movie.
But just a delightful, like I said when we reviewed this one about a month ago, now 5 weeks ago. This is going to be added to the holiday rotation every year, and I'll happily have a sit-down argument or discussion with anybody that feels that it's not the case.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So on to my number 1, I'm going to talk about some honorable mentions real quick. We already talked about Bill and Ted Face the Music. That I love this movie. It is a great movie. Definitely recommend it. Palm Springs with Andy Samberg, also on Hulu. I really liked this movie a lot. I had a lot of fun with it. Let Them All Talk, which we just reviewed with Meryl Streep, directed by Steven Soderbergh. Big fan of that movie. Check it out on HBO Max. And then Jingle Jangle, as Wayne just talked about, that was another one. I also really adored Project Power. Great movie. Like I said, a lot of the things that we watched this year we really liked. My number 1, though, is going to be The Trial of the Chicago 7, directed by Aaron Sorkin. starring Sacha Baron Cohen and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Jeremy Strong, bunch of other people who I'm drawing a blank on right now. Eddie Redmayne. It's a great movie. It's about the riot trial in Chicago in the 1960s. The performances are fantastic in this film. I really hope that they, get recognition when the Oscars come around. The scenes, Aaron Sorkin is really good at writing scenes, and that's one thing that's why his TV shows are so good. If you like his style of writing, I know people that don't like his style of writing, and I get that. A lot of the complaint is his writing doesn't sound like how people would normally talk, and I think that's the kind of the point. It's how we think, and everybody knows if you've spoken that sometimes when you think something, it doesn't come out how you think in your head. It comes out maybe not sounding as smart or smooth, or you stutter through it, or whatever. Like, so when he's writing these movies, he's writing, I think, how people think, and then having those actors say those words. And the performances in this movie are fantastic. My favorite scene is still the scene towards the end where they're having the discussion and who's going to go up on the stand for them in their defense. But it's been mainly between Eddie Redmayne and Sacha Baron Cohen's characters, who are fantastic in the movie. It's just a really great movie. It's very poignant. Obviously, it takes a lot from today, and that's why it's kind of one of those important films, right? Because it's a movie about the 60s, but everything in it relates to the problems that are still happening in this country now. And
absolutely. I think the portrayal by the judge, Frank Langella.
Yep.
Bobby Seale's character, Yahya Abdul Mateen II.
Yep.
Just that really encapsulates exactly what it was like back then, and how the black man involved in this, who's not involved in this,
who wasn't involved, yeah, but they made involved.
It's just, as a white guy watching this one, I was enraged. So I can only imagine the anger and rage of an entire, race and what they were going through at this time. I can only assume at this point that it resonates and just encapsulates exactly what the feeling and the height and what the rate at this time was. And
yeah, for sure.
Well, it's just, we watch movies like this to be moved and to be educated, and it did both. Mm-hmm. I'm entertained as well, but it's just amazing. An amazing period piece.
Yeah.
And you could nominate half this cast for Academy Awards.
Yep, and, for sure.
If we don't get multiple nominations in both lead and supporting actors, I will be shocked.
Yeah, I agree. And I think definitely a Best Picture nomination is in the cards. The acting stuff, I definitely agree with you. It's just there's always so many performances every year. It's always hard to see who's going to get in. And sometimes, I don't know how much they're going to enjoy nominating Sacha Baron Cohen, but we'll see. That's kind of who I'm hoping for, because I thought he gave kind of a career performance there. And just something different that people didn't realize. Like, my wife didn't even really know it was him until the end, when I didn't want to tell her, because I didn't want her to be kind of turned away from the movie because it's Sacha Baron Cohen, because she does not like the Borat movies. So I was more like, I was waiting, and then at the end I was like, did you know that it was him? She's like, oh, no, I didn't. He was good.
Wow, so you're a Bruno fan, huh?
Yeah, no, not a Bruno fan, not a Dictator fan. I haven't shown her the Brothers Grimby yet. She's not a fan of his. He's kind of gross to her, I think. But anyway, so there's our top 5 movies of the year for each of us. Only one repeat, which is pretty good. So, I mean, I think you kind of saw, I think, the directions that Wayne and I were going in with these. And it shows that we reviewed, again, a lot of movies that we all liked, or that we both liked. So most of these you can check out: Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime. They're all out there. That's how we watched most of them, or all of them. So Go ahead, search them out. We're going to get on to our review of the week. So this week starts the Warner Brothers deal, of which the movie goes to theaters and then hits HBO Max. It started on Christmas for 31 days. And the first movie was Wonder Woman 1984. Directed by Patty Jenkins, starring Gal Gadot Chris Pine, Pedro Pascal, Kristen Wiig, brief appearances by Robin Wright and the woman that plays Connie Nielsen, who plays the mother, Diana's mother.
Hippolyta.
Yes. It starts out like 60 years later than the last movie, which was in World War One. And we get Diana just kind of being Wonder Woman, kind of on the down low. She saves stops like a robbery, not a bank robbery, but a robbery in progress at the mall. And then people start to talk about her kind of like think like Spider-Man, something like that. And then she holds this stone, and apparently she makes this sort of wish or whatever. If people were wondering how Steve Trevor comes back, that kind of leads us into this story. And he is brought back in the body of another man. But when she sees him, he's Chris Pine. Therefore, Chris Pine can still be in the movie. She then meets Barbara Minerva, who she works with at the was it like museum or whatever, wherever they work.
Archaeologist type thing.
Yeah, and Barbara Minerva is Kristen Wiig, who, if you paid attention, is Cheetah. And then Pedro Pascal plays Max Lord, who is basically like this movie's Lex Luthor. Max Lord in the DC universe is like another kind of Lex Luthor type character, like lots of money, lots of influence with that money.
This is the way.
Yes. Well, we'll get to that later.
It may not be the right way, but
so this movie, I'll just start off by saying this. I enjoyed this movie. I didn't think it was as good as the first one. There was kind of a lot left to be desired, but I did think it was a entertaining film. There is some question I've been reading. I just read today before we got on, Wayne, where some people were not happy with the characterization of Arab people, and other people were not happy with the fact that it seems like Diana basically rapes this guy who has Steve Trevor in his mind. And is kind of like, some people took it very seriously. And not that they're wrong. They are obviously okay to have their opinions. I did not feel any of that when I watched this movie. I just kind of thought of it as a lighthearted comic book movie. I think our friend JT kind of put it the best, like it was a kind of a throwback to like the lighthearted DC movies, where it was more fun and fluffy. And I think a lot of people enjoyed it for the fact that it wasn't so serious, because the DC universe got very serious for quite some time.
It definitely felt like one of the Superman movie, the Christopher Reeve Superman movies.
Yes,
for sure. Don't read the reviews because they are just filled with venom and trash. I'm scrolling through IMDb right now. I'm seeing 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10. Absolutely awful, garbage, putrid, very vastly disappointing. People come into the epic movies like this with extremely high expectations of what they want, what they're expecting, and fulfilled, they lash out and get angry about things. It appears, what you said, what you commented on about the man whom Steve rents space from, I guess. I didn't get that either, but to not acknowledge somebody's reaction to that is, I guess it's a trigger point. Would you?
I think a lot of those things come out in a movie when people don't like it. Yeah. When you don't like it, you're looking for things that are negative towards it. I'm sure those people that have made those comments have seen many body swap comedies or movies where people go into other people's bodies and didn't make those comments. I don't know why specifically this movie gets that comment. I think at the time when it was happening, Diana didn't really know in the movie what was going on because they weren't sure why he was back. He was just back. They didn't figure out till about halfway through, right, that it was her wish that brought him.
Back at first. I mean, I didn't pay close enough attention.
Yeah.
When she made her wish with the stone, it was a nonverbal.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It was supposed to be. I think it was just something she held it, and that's what she was thinking when she held it.
And then when Kristen Wiig's character, forgive me, I've forgotten the name, makes her wish, it's kind of also, it's not as subtle, but I still was like, oh, wait, is this happening? Because I had to stop and take my attention away from what was happening in the movie to recall and bring in, like, it. You had to really pay attention and really kind of put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And, I'm not trying to sound like a jerk here, but some of us are not so smart and can't put pieces together, so they get confused and then they get angry. So.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't want to, everyone obviously has the right to their own opinion. I just didn't feel any of that. I don't really see it. I guess I could kind of draw a line to it, but to me, it was just an entertaining comic book romp that wasn't as good as the first movie, but it was still enjoyable. The action sequences I thought were really cool. The one thing I will agree with, I thought was kind of, I did have a thought in a moment when, because people were kind of upset that like Diana tied herself to Steve Trevor. And I kind of felt the same thing. I was like, well, why would she, why is it like about a guy all of a sudden? But she did love him, and it was technically her first love. So I think maybe the issue is that maybe for some people that didn't come across enough in the first movie. But that's what this is supposed to be. She's been basically alone for 60 years, pining for her first and only love in Steve Trevor, and she finally gets him back. So it's not the fact that she needs a guy around. It's just that this in her heart is her only one true love, and he's back for a short period of time, and it's hard for her to get rid of him.
Well, she basically had to let him go to save the world. I mean,
right, exactly. Yeah.
I've heard that love story before, but now all of a sudden it's a problem.
Yeah, I know.
Her character, it makes her a strong enough character to do what needs to be done.
Right, exactly. And usually, I think with Wonder Woman 2, what the point of the Wonder Woman movies, at least now, is that to take the archetype of the superhero man and turn it into a woman, which is exactly what they did. How many superhero movies have we seen where the man has to turn away his true love or his girlfriend to go save people? And that's kind of what they were going for, I think, in this movie. I just think for some people it didn't come across that way. And like I said, I think if people enjoyed it more, maybe it wouldn't have been such a red flag for them. And again...
Do you think if this was Batman having to give up his love, would people have been so...
Well... I don't know. And see, what's interesting is the people that are upset about it are the feminists, are the people that...
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's because she was a woman that it makes her weaker than...
Yes, that's where they're coming at it from.
I don't...
But again, I don't... we don't need to get into that too much. I just thought it was an interesting negative review of the movie. Not feeling that way when I watched it at all. But interesting, I guess it's another thing to bring up because it's interesting to see how everybody could watch a movie and some people come away differently. Now, those same people, though, are trying to be like, well, how you could watch this and not think that... It's like, you can't take what you thought of a movie and then put it onto anybody else. If someone else watched the movie and didn't get that out of it, it's not a hateful movie. I don't think it's doing any of this stuff on purpose, and I think that was some of the points they were making. And I think that... It's more of a product of the type of movie it was trying to be, which was a throwback to those DC movies, and it takes place in the 80s, so they were trying to make it like, hey, men are shit. And they were shit in the 80s, and they're still kind of shit. Because anytime either one of the main female characters is out and about in town, they're being hit on by some creepy douchebag. So I think they were trying to show just like, how women can't like go out anymore and like be normal. And I think that I don't know if that, because that didn't get brought up in any of the negative stuff. So maybe they didn't have a problem with that. I don't want to get held up on this stuff. So we're just going to move on because we'll talk about the movie. I thought Gal Gadot was very good in this one. Again, the villains, Pedro Pascal and Kristen Wiig, I thought did a good job. It was just kind of one of those things. It's, you wish for success or whatever, that it was one of those movies you bite off more than you can chew. And that was the kind of the premise of this movie, right? Like you get what you bargain for. So you want success, you're going to pay for it, right? And that's kind of what we get out of this movie. And it for Diana's purpose, it shows that like she needs to just move forward, kind of like needs to move on, and that is what happens. So the action sequences I thought were really good. It does take a little bit to get going. It was probably like an hour before we got our next like action sequence after the first one in the beginning. Right. Lots of setup between for Pedro Pascal's character and for Barbara Minerva, Kristen Wiig's character. But enjoyable, I thought.
I would have liked to have seen a little bit more Cheetah at the end.
Yeah.
But, what we got was sufficient.
Yeah.
We could go into, why she swinging around on power cables, and being fine, but all of a sudden, I don't know. We're not going to get into physics and whatnot. You can question it.
With her getting electrocuted, yeah. I don't know. There's a few things that obviously get brought into question in every superhero movie, and would this be logical? And obviously not logical in reality because we understand that these movies aren't reality. But the fact, like you said, the fact that she's swinging on other things that should have maybe shocked her or whatever and didn't, and then she gets shocked towards the end. Maybe the water had something to do with it because she's a kitty. Like I don't know, which will kind of relate into our next movie and our when we get to Awfully Good. But first we'll get to Gone but Not Forgotten.
Yes. Oh yeah, overall Wonder Woman 1984. It's a spectacle. Before you read the reviews, give it a watch before you make a decision.
Yeah,
don't be influenced by other people's negativity.
Yes, exactly. I do think the ending was a bit anticlimactic, but I think that was by design. And that kind of adds to the kind of more cheesiness, DC type style of a movie they were going for, I think. Which, again, different movie than the first movie, still enjoyable. I just prefer the first movie. That's what I'll say. All right, so on to Gone But Not Forgotten. We're going to talk about one of the greatest DC icons on television for such a long time, even after he stopped playing that. And that is Adam West. He was, as many people know, Batman on the Batman TV show, which was more of like a parody of Batman, I guess, in a way. But it's kind of how a lot of us came to know Batman for the first time. Even like you and me, Wayne, he was on way before we were born, but the reruns were while we were growing up. So
he was on we're little. He portrayed Batman from 1966 to 1968, 3 years. And, he's forever known as the Caped Crusader. To be, I don't know if typecasted is appropriate here, but he was definitely somebody that used it to advantage to continue to work throughout the years.
Yes.
Definitely a big voice actor. I think probably his delivery is probably one of the most recognizable.
Agreed.
Just very stoic and very serious. But with that serious delivery, the undertones of humor that he incorporates in, especially when he portrays himself as Mayor Adam West on Family Guy.
Yes.
It's just hilarious. And, he seemed like he was always okay with making fun of himself and not taking himself seriously.
Well, what was great about the Batman series, and we'll get into this a little bit in our awful review as well, was that they bought in, right? So, like, it was goofy, and I think a lot of it was goofy on purpose, but in order to do a show like that, your lead actors have to buy into what they're doing, and they did. And that was the kind of the beauty of that. When they would deliver those cheesy one-liners, they believed them. They delivered them with conviction, which made them land, and they were great. And it just... he had that delivery that, like you said, when he went on to be in Family Guy as Mayor Adam West, that's why they cast him, because he was so good at that, at being himself. And it sounds kind of ridiculous when you say that, but when himself kind of makes a role, can change a role and make it, go one way or the other, like, it's important to be able to be that person. And for Family Guy, specifically, like, we grew up on that as well, Wayne. So, like, that was more of our college years, I guess. But for that, more, you kind of, it was a new side of him almost, You get the Batman sound with his voice, but you kind of get this goofy, old guy, kind of senile, but making these great quips and these great one-liners in that Batman voice that he used for that show. So it was great that he got to resonate with us as kids and as adults, I think. So I mean, outside of, let's see, he was also on The Simpsons, Fairly Odd Parents, so he did a lot of voiceover work. He really, I honestly don't know if I ever saw any of his movies outside of maybe the Batman movie that they did for the TV show. Yeah, it looks like he was in a bunch of just weird movies until Family Guy. So I mean, when he died in 2017, it wasn't. I won't say it was a shock necessarily, but it sucked because having known him for almost 20 years on Family Guy, and then also knowing him from the Batman TV show, he kind of just always been there in our childhood through our adult life. So he's just another one of those actors that I wanted to touch on because obviously he fits into what we're talking about today with Wonder Woman and our next movie, but it just was fun having him as long as we did, and the fact that he was, like you said, didn't take himself too seriously and was able to do the role on Family Guy as Mayor Adam West and kind of add to his legacy, if you will, of just who he was. And I think that was something that we'll always treasure from him. So Adam West, thank you for giving us many years of entertainment and combating with Stewie Griffin and Brian Griffin and Peter Griffin and making hilarious one-liners on a favorite show of mine. All right, so moving on to Awfully Good or Just Plain Awful. We have the 2004 film Catwoman, starring Halle Berry and Benjamin Bratt and Sharon Stone. It's a movie about Catwoman. I don't think it holds too true to the comics, so that could be... there are a lot of reasons not to like this movie. It's directed by, a director who just goes by Pitoff. One name. Written by John Brancato, Michael Ferris, John Rogers. And it follows Patience Phillips, aka Catwoman, Halle Berry. She is a graphic designer for a beauty cream company, and she is kind of standoffish. Not standoffish. That's not the right words. Timid, and not very outgoing. Doesn't really believe in herself, type of thing. She ends up having this project that she's got to turn into the main office at midnight or whatever. So she goes over there, finds that they're doing bad things. They try to get rid of her, and she ends up getting, typical to these movies, especially back then, an acid or whatever, and mixed with cat abilities, and becomes Catwoman. So her senses are heightened. She's more cat-like.
Her agility is enhanced. Her sense of smell.
What was funny at one point in this movie, Wayne, I was like, I turned to my wife because I'd seen. Now this is one of the ones I've seen bits and pieces of, but I never watched the whole movie. So I wanted to do this. Obviously, it was basically the first modern day attempt to make a DC female driven movie. Obviously, there was the Supergirl one from the 80s that kind of just came and went. But this one, I guess, 2000s version of DC superheroes. So I said, I'm like, oh, it's a lot like The Crow. And then immediately I was like, wait a minute. That henchman was Michael Massey from The Crow, wasn't it? So the guy, Michael Massey, who's the one that pulled the trigger on Brandon Lee, who unfortunately killed him, not on purpose, is actually in Catwoman. So I thought that was an interesting tie-in. I was like, oh. Because there's a one point where she's sitting on a ledge, and the cat comes up next to her, and I'm like, oh, so this is The Crow. Because it just reminded me of him sitting on the ledge and the crow flying right next to him. I was like, oh.
I got that. Thinking about it now, I was like, oh.
It's basically perched up on the thing, and I was like, huh. So this movie, This is one, I don't know how you felt about it, Wayne, but I'm going to go through how I felt about it real quick. It had terrible dialogue. I think it's something that was evident if you saw the movie. It had these one-liners that were pretty awful. Yeah. The editing was insane. Like, whoever was doing this was on crack. I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, every scene was like 35 cuts in like 2 seconds, and then another 35 cuts in 2 seconds. I was like, dude, what the hell? Relax. Now,
there were 2 separate occasions where I had to like stop and rewind just because
what is going on?
Let the scene breathe.
Right, exactly. As was the case for 2004, the CGI was not great. But that was typical. I won't blame this movie for that. That was typical of the time. Especially when you had a lot of fast-moving stuff. It didn't look very good when you used CGI. However, this movie is enjoyable, I think. There are a few reasons. One, everyone buys in. This is what I was talking about with Adam West. No matter how good or bad the dialogue was, everybody bought into every moment of this movie when they made it. And that helps the movie at least look like a movie and looks like people care. No one, I don't think, was phoning it in. Even Sharon Stone, who has been accused of that in the past. I think she really kind of gave her all in this, as did Benjamin Bratt, as did Halle Berry. And the main thing, I think, the first thing they did, unfortunately a script didn't follow along with it, but they were right off the bat, casting Halle Berry was the right move. She was hot off her Oscar win. She was quickly becoming a popular actress. It's just terrible script, terrible editing, really bad soundtrack too, by the way. For a lot of good songs that were in the 2000s, not a very good soundtrack. However, like I said, this movie does have its enjoyable moments. Her quips back and forth between the good guys and the bad guys, I thought, while lame, were funny for how lame they were. And just to think when you're hearing him, you're just kind of like, oh, that was really bad, but also kind of hilarious. Like, it was just like, and when she purred, I was like, what? And then,
oh, she can purr all she wants, man. That's fine.
I know. Well, and that's the thing. Like, the outfit, like, of course, the outfit was very sexy and but like, what were they like? What was the thought process there? Like, we need teenage boys to have more of something to be attracted to. Like, you already cast Halle Berry. Do you need much else beyond that?
You could have had a better suit for her. You didn't need the cleavage and all that stuff.
The cleavage. I mean, there was not much left to the imagination.
Like, you could have used a bodysuit and had it functional, and it'd still be, hey, how you doing?
Right, exactly. Like,
let's talk about the mask bothers me.
Yes, I agree.
And I'm like, it's like sexy cosplay. It's like, really, guys? This is the best you can come up with?
It reminded me of an S&M mask. That's what it reminded me of. Like something like Rihanna would wear in one of her music videos or something. Which, hey, completely have no problem with whatsoever. But just as a practical outfit, it was just kind of like, wait, why is she wearing that? Like, it looked weird. I would have been more okay with if they did the original Michelle Pfeiffer costume and just made a few alterations to it. Or one of the originals from the Adam West days. But yeah, I mean, obviously it had the desired effect, right? I mean, that was what they were going for, was it to be overtly sexy. And that's what she was. And Halle Berry kind of played that to a T. Like I said, she's really good in this movie. It's just not a good movie, which is why it falls under the awfully good or just plain awful category, because it was a huge misfire. But like I said, I think it does have its entertainment value to it. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't made itself into the lexicon a little bit more with how bad good it is, if you will, with how awfully good it is.
It's really awfully good for me as well.
I wasn't sure how you were going to feel about it, but yeah, I definitely got that feeling. I was like, wow, it kind of made me feel like Plan 9, like when that one was awfully good. Like, I kind of had the same feeling, like either we're getting bad acting or we're getting people that are really trying and just a horrible script. And I think this one was really trying, but just a horrible script.
You can put aside all the bad stuff and still watch this movie, and whether or not you enjoy it, it's not the worst thing you ever saw. I mean, Halle Berry Sharon Stone. You get Benjamin Bratt doing Benjamin Bratt things that some people are really, really fond of.
Yes.
I always enjoy him.
Yeah, it basically reminded me of his performance in Miss Congeniality. I was like, oh, it's like the same character. So, and he played a cop again. So
I actually really liked Alex Borstein's character too.
Yep.
I just, she's just the one-dimensional friend. I'm just like, I like her.
Yes. And there was the one scene, too, where her and Halle Berry were walking down the street, and she had massive cleavage. And I was like, was this just because Halle Berry refused to, wear a regular shirt? I was just confused in what was going on, which, again, no problem with it whatsoever, not shaming whatsoever. It was an interesting style choice, I think, in that particular scene, because it was an overhead shot, so obviously you're going to see her cleavage. So it was just a weird, I guess, choice for that. But yeah, no, it was, again, it's a bad movie, but it's entertaining. Alex Borstein being in it is also a fun tie back to Family Guy because she plays Lois. And yeah, I thought she was really funny. But what's interesting too is it's a superhero rom-com. So that's maybe kind of why it gets a little bit of a longer leash, if you will, if you're into cats on leashes or Halle Berry on a leash, which probably people would be. But yeah, it kind of plays into those rom-com charms until obviously he finds out who she is, and that kind of goes away a little bit. But yeah, it's an interesting piece of history of a superhero film that I think people should go back and revisit, because it's definitely on how not to make one of those movies, but there are some bright spots in it. So that's how I will end it. So let's get into what we watched this week. Let's see, I don't even think I have a whole ton, but because of you, Wayne, I've started rewatching Sons of Anarchy.
Very nice.
And I think a lot of it had to do with, I missed, you were talking about it, and I'm like, you know what? I miss those guys. I haven't watched them in a while.
Oh.
And I'm only 2 episodes in, but still, it was a lot of fun to kind of start revisiting that.
Some days you're the GD deer.
Yes. It's such a great show. If people haven't seen it, I do recommend it. I did also watch Don't Listen on Netflix, which is a new spiritual horror film from Spain. Really good. I highly recommend it. Kind of crazy, kind of nutty. Definitely people should watch it. And the other thing I want to talk about, because I finally caught up and watched The Mandalorian. And I love the shit out of it.
This is the way.
This is the way. Pedro Pascal, hell of an end of the year. He had Mandalorian, Wonder Woman 2, and then he's got the Netflix one, We Are Heroes. So he's kind of a big end of the year for him. Mandalorian, man, I finished season 1 and then I went right on to season 2, and it's just so good, man. And I mean, so much that I don't think we can talk about because it would be spoilers. But obviously, I think at this point people know that Boba Fett finally returned, which we had talked to some of our friends when we worked at Feld about the possibility of that happening. And it's finally happened. And he's finally getting his own TV show, too. So that'll be interesting on how that goes.
You finished season 2 of The Mandalorian?
Huh?
Have you finished
season 2? Oh, no. Yeah, it's done. Yeah.
That ending, I don't know how they could have ever done anything more perfect for me.
Yep.
Just absolutely fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
It was an insane episode. What I didn't like about it is the one part that we won't talk about because I don't want to spoil it for anybody was spoiled for me. And it did kind of disappoint me a little bit knowing it going in, but it was still a hell of a thing to watch because then you're like, oh, this is what's going to happen now. Oh my God, it's happening. And it was awesome. And it's just a great series. I think people should really get on it if they haven't. I'm not going to get into whether it's the greatest Star Wars thing since the first Star Wars, because I'm not a diehard Star Wars fan. But it's a very enjoyable series. Pedro Pascal is very good as the Mandalorian. The rest of the cast is also good. I'm a huge fan of Katie Sackhoff, who joined this season. I love Rosario Dawson, who's getting her own TV show based on this. I hope Katie Sackhoff's character stays around. It seems like she will, because she's she's with him at the end. We already know that Ming-Na Wen is going to go to the Boba Fett show with Boba Fett, so that'll be interesting. Her character is really good as well. what's interesting too is Mandalorian season 3 and Boba Fett season 1 are both going to be in December of next year, so that's going to be kind of crazy. I do like that they brought back it's like Tamira Morrison, I think is how you pronounce it, who played Jango Fett, right, in the prequels.
Right.
So
for all of the clone troopers.
yes, so then he comes back and is Boba Fett, even though he never played Boba Fett before technically. So I thought that was kind of a cool little able to bring him in moment. And we did last week. I forgot to mention the original Boba Fett actor did pass away, so rest in peace to him. But it's kind of cool that the character he played, now the legacy kind of continues, so it's kind of cool.
There's been some talk that The Mandalorian has saved Star Wars for some people, and if you feel that way, I'm glad you enjoyed it. The only thing I'm going to say is The Mandalorian does not do anything but help make Star Wars better.
Yeah, agreed.
It's just it's a fantastic take on a universe that doesn't really involve the Force or lightsabers.
Yes.
The fact that standalone, much like Rogue One, Star Wars can exist without leaning on that aspect and those characters.
Yes.
So,
and let us all thank Jon Favreau for why we have this. He's a big...
And Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni's responsible for a lot of the animated shows.
Yes.
He's finding his opportunity to go further than that.
Yes.
And he is succeeding. And so thank you to both of them for creating. I've enjoyed so much.
And Dave, I believe Dave is going to run the Ashoka series, or Asaka, I don't know how you say that.
Ahsoka-tan.
Yes. And then Robert Rodriguez will executive produce the Boba Fett series, which he directed the main Boba Fett episode, which was episode 6 of season 2. Even though in episode 1 we get the glimpse of Boba Fett, which if anybody knows that what Morrison looks like, once you see that scene at the end of the first episode, you're like, oh, well, there he is. So that's one thing I took out of the original, not the original, but the prequels. I remembered what he looked like. I guess because you see him so many times, because he's a clone. So yeah, it was a great watch, great series. I'm looking forward to that and some of the other ones that are coming out. I will, even the ones I'm not interested in, I'll definitely watch them because this one has been so good. And I do love too that Favreau has brought a lot of his Marvel guys over, like Taika Waititi and Peyton Reed, who did the Ant-Man movies. And also Bryce Dallas Howard directed and Carl Weathers directed an episode. Just a lot of people, him bringing over to direct these episodes, I think is great. Obviously he did one this season. I think he did one last season too. So yeah, it's been fun just kind of going through that series finally and getting to watch it all. So
awesome.
Wayne, what you got? Anything you watched this week?
No, not really. It was really kind of the holiday. We watched a lot of holiday movies. We revisited Home Alone 1 and 2. We watched some Muppet Christmas Carol. We did all of our usual ones. I got to watch It's a Wonderful Life, one of my guiltiest, most treasured films. So, just, round out the holidays. Yep. Just looking forward to ending 2020 best as possible and looking forward to the future,
Yep.
21, let's see what you get. I know what you got, what you're going to get. A lot more episodes than now showing with Mike and Wayne.
Yes, you are. Every week, every Friday. From here on till eternity. And all right, so news this week. We mentioned already Star Wars: The Book of Boba Fett coming to Disney Plus December 2021. David Gordon Green is directing an Exorcist sequel. So he did the new Halloween movie. I assume it'll be in the way of the same as those. They'll probably erase 2 and 3 from existence and do his own sequel to the original movie, I would imagine. Movies coming out soon. The White Tiger, which is possibly going to be an Oscar consideration movie, coming to Netflix January 22nd of this year, or of next year. Cobra Kai Season 3, as we already talked about, has been bumped up to New Year's Day. So look out for that. We will obviously be talking about that once we get to consume it all. And so everybody, thank you for staying with us and, listening to us every week. We appreciate it. To follow us, go to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne on Facebook and Instagram. On Twitter, it's at now_Wayne. Email us at nowshowingwithmikeandwayne@gmail.com. My personal is wearescrewed2 on Twitter, at Mike1830 on Instagram, at Michael Kirkpatrick on Facebook. It's the one with the Now Showing logo. Wayne is at Wayne Yerke on Twitter, at Wayne_Yerke on Instagram, and at Wayne Yerke on Facebook. We are on Entertainment Buffet on their YouTube page. Subscribe, listen to our shows, enjoy all their other content. Lots of great stuff on there. For Wayne Yerke, I am Michael Kirkpatrick. Thank you for listening to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.